Okay, so let's get started. Today we have a presentation about leveraging DNR tools to determine Zone A base flood elevations. Our presenter is Joe Martinenza. For those of you who don't know Joe, he's a professional engineer with the Georgia Department of Natural Resources. He has nearly 25 years of experience in floodplain hydrology and hydraulics, with 20 years working directly with the National Flood Insurance Program. He currently manages flood risk projects for the Georgia Flood M.A.P. program. He assists communities in determining BFEs, NFIP regulation interpretation, and NFIP processes. And with that introduction, I'll turn it now over to Joe.
Thanks, Emily. I appreciate that. Hopefully everybody can hear me. I'm going to pull up my presentation here. So good afternoon. Thanks for joining. Hopefully you'll get a lot out of this. There are some things we're doing here at the DNR that are just, I like to think they're very exciting. It's just we're putting a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of money to make your jobs easier. There's no other way to put it. And I'll be showing you some of these things as we go along. Again, this is leveraging DNR tools to determine Zone A BFEs. I will share with you some additional things besides just those tools because I think it'll be applicable to your jobs. We'll be doing some live demos. Cross your fingers. Hopefully those work out. If not, I've got some slides we can do instead of live demos. I don't count on them. So before we get into it, let's get our first poll question going. And of course, Daniel, I am not getting the poll thing, what I'm sharing right now. It's somebody else. See, we already hit our first glitch. I don't think Daniel can hear me. Jeff, Daniel, either one of you want to help me out as host here?
Sure, Joe. I believe you may have to be host to present the poll questions. Daniel, you're
so that would be Daniel.
Yeah.
So he's pulling up the first of two poll questions. I just kind of want to get a feel with this first poll question. How do you currently determine Zone A BFEs when you're requested? This isn't a question of which answer is more correct. It's just, do you use? And I think that'll help guide the conversation a little bit as we move forward and I show you some of these tools.
It looks like it's having some issues with the poll. I don't know why it's not working. I'm sorry.
Okay, someone tell me, shall I move on or?
Hey, Joe, go ahead and move on with your presentation.
Beautiful. Okay, well, we'll try it again in a bit then. So the first thing is, let's identify what the problem is. So what is the problem? We have Zone A BFEs. Well, we need a Zone A BFE, but the problem is if you kind of look at this map, this is kind of like a D-firm panel. The first thing is there's no BFE information on the maps. Oftentimes there's not even a model to back up to support the floodplain itself. We find this is particularly the case in some areas in southern Georgia. In northern Georgia, it's getting a little better because that's where we've been doing a lot of studies. But without that information, you're kind of on your own to determine your own BFE, which is why I assume you're here. And for some reason, there we go. I'm sorry, I was having it. So there's a lack of information. The second one is capability. FPAs come from all sorts of backgrounds. Some are engineers, and determining BFEs comes naturally to them. But we find most of the floodplain administrators around Georgia are city clerks, EMA personnel, elected officials. Engineering is not their background. in fact, it's usually just a small part of their job. They have a job, but they're also listed as the FPA, and these things, you have to come up with a BFE infrequently, so you're not really sure how to do it when it does pop up. And this presentation will help with that. We go around the state holding meetings. Well, every year we go around the state. We have lunch and learns like this. We go to conferences, and the thing we hear from floodplain administrators is they would rather have access to the information needed to determine the BFE than to actually figure out how to determine the BFE themselves. That really resonates with us. We have all this great information. So for us, we wanted to make sure the information is given to you, not only given to you, but is presented in such a way to make that job easier. We have several ways of doing that. So the third thing is time. I mean, time is a big problem. In order to come up with a BFE, it takes time. And if you have to do it often, it takes a lot of time. If you only have to do it once in a while, you're not really keeping it fresh on your mind as to how it's done. So now you have to relearn the things that you knew, 6 months, a year ago. So time is a big problem. The second thing is then, so we have the problem, but why do we need the BFE? Well, there are several reasons we would need it. The first would be, the most common, is elevation certificate. We need a BFE on there so that we can accurately assess flood insurance rates. It's as simple as that. The program was built on flood insurance primarily. Without that BFE, you don't know how high or how far above or below the base flood elevation you are. It really affects the rating, so you have to have it. But also for things like development. Developer comes in and wants to do some work, but you need to say, well, you have to build at or above this elevation. A lot of our floodplains, as you know, are zone A. That information, if it doesn't exist, makes that very difficult. The third thing is really communicating risk. This kind of, previously, I'd say not in the past, 5 to 8 years, but before that, communicating risk wasn't really a high priority, but now it is. We're creating all this great data, but if nobody is using it, nobody understands what the risks are, then it's not really, I don't want to say it's not worth the effort or the money that we put into it, but certainly if they know the risk, they can plan for that risk, and it will help make them more resilient. So we're going to go through a few different solutions. You have a zone A area. Someone asks you for a BFE. What is the most difficult way to determine a BFE? Well, the most difficult way would be to build a model. Thing about the model is they're very accurate. With no other resources available, if someone says, let's determine a BFE, building a model is the most accurate way of developing that, without a doubt. The models are usually created using HECRAS software. It's freely available. It's widely used. Those of us who deal with floodplain analysis on a daily basis, this is the software we use 99% of the time. If you're not building the model, you may be asking a developer to provide a model. And in that case, you're putting your trust in the developer. Now, I'm not saying developers are untrustworthy, but you're kind of letting them dictate what that base flood elevation is, and you're taking their word for it. And that's okay. That's okay. But you still, sometimes, a lot of you may have been in this situation. You just have that feeling like, well, this isn't quite right, or as rigorous as analysis as it could be. So what does it take to build a model then? So the first thing is you have to find decent topography. You may have topography available, you may not, but you have to have topography or you cannot do the analysis. The next thing is you need to develop the peak flow. Well, that's hydrology. Even using the regression equations, which is plugging information into an equation to get an answer for those peak flows, you still have to have a certain amount of understanding of hydrology and the hydrologic process. And when, you can plug in some variables and get an answer, but you're not going to have any way of gauging, is that correct? Is this reasonable for this area? So that could be a little bit difficult. Then you need to build the model using the topography. So you got to find a way to get that topography into something like HEC-RAS, which typically means some sort of automated process like GeoRAS or using the RAS mapper tool functionality inside HEC-RAS itself. But then that's a whole nother thing you have to learn how to do. Determine all engineering variables. This can be tricky if you don't have the skill sets to determine what the variables are and how to determine them and figure out if they're reasonable. Then your model really isn't going to be very good. I mean, you can plug in numbers and get a model to run, excuse me, but you're not going to get a very good answer. Then you got to get the model to run. You click run and it doesn't work and it throws a ton of errors. You have to understand how to fix those errors. Once you get it running, you have to tweak it to make sure it's reasonable, so on and so forth. I guess I say all that to say it takes a lot of time and effort. I say it's the difficult way, and it is in the sense that if you are an engineer, it's the most time-consuming way that we're going to talk about here. If you're not an engineer who deals with this on a daily basis, you're just not going to have the skill set to do it. And in order to learn it, it just takes a lot of time. So here we're going to get into this is really where we're going to get into the DNR tools. We're going to show you some better ways of coming up with the BFEs. This is why you're here, I'm guessing. And this is very, this has been very important to us, getting this set up. What you're looking at here is the Georgia, it's georgiadfirm.com. This is our website. This is where we keep all of our information. So I'm going to show you the models here, but also things like outreach materials, guidebooks, pamphlets, anything you can think of, information on insurance. It's all here on our website. So if you've never visited georgiadfirm.com, you should start there. And I think after I get through showing you a demo here in a bit, you'll get a feel that it's really easy to use. Jeff Butler, who is the co-host here with us, he has designed this site. He originally designed this site with the intention of you're never more than 2 or 3 clicks away from getting an answer. So whatever your question is, you're never more than 2 or 3 clicks away, and it's really nice. You can see here in the middle, there's the 3 little tabs that say property owners, community officials, DNR program officials. We've basically segmented this site up so that if you're a community official, you click on that middle tab, it gets you to those tools and those resources that are of use to you. Not that you can't go to the other tabs. Anyone can get to anywhere in the website, but it definitely helps speed up the process. Right now, we are spending more than $500,000 just to get the models and the data from the models onto this website. It is a huge effort for us. This is what the model search page looks like, and I'm going to do a live demo for you here in a few minutes, but a couple of things I want to point out, or at least one thing here. The first thing is there's a map of Georgia. You can see there that some of the counties are green and some are kind of grayed out there. The counties that are in green, we have models for. These are models that are available to you. These are models that will be in the lookup. The models we have in there only go back to 2007. So if the effective model is older than 2007, we did not put it on the website. And there's several reasons for that. One, typically if they're older than 2007, they weren't really done by the DNR using very I don't want to say very good topo, but we have much better topo now than we did. And any model from 2007 to now, it's going to be based on really good topo. So we're going to have confidence in those models. It's also important to note just because a county's in green doesn't mean that all streams have a model. So it could be that a stream doesn't have a model yet, but all the streams we have from that were built after 2007 will be on this website. The reason I want to pull this map up is because you may be in a county where it's not green right now. Well, we are changing this often. Every month we're adding new counties to it. It's an ongoing process. So just because your county isn't there right now, right this particular moment, doesn't mean it won't be there tomorrow or the next day. Of course, you can always contact me. I'll have some contact information at the end, and we can talk about your county and where it may fall on the list and what we're doing. The last thing I want to say about our models before I get into the demo, you can have confidence in these models. These models were created by us. They have been certified by a professional engineer. All of the models that go on this website have been certified, so you don't have to worry about that. All the models that are going on this website have been through an independent quality assurance process. We have a separate engineering firm that reviews the models and makes sure that they meet FEMA specs. All the models on this website have also been approved by FEMA for use by communities for floodplain management purpose for flood insurance rating. So anything that's on here, any model that you get, you can certainly use and feel comfortable using them and that they represent best available data. So let me go into here for a moment and let's take a look at the model website. I'm going to switch over to the web page. Hopefully that's going to pop up on your screen here. I'll give it just a sec to make sure. So this is georgiadfirm.com. This is our home page or landing page, so to speak. So if we're talking about accessing models, there's a couple of different ways we can do it. The first one is the model search that I'm talking about now. So we can go into this community officials tab. In here, there's tabs across the top. And we have, each tab has information along the right side. I don't know if my cursor shows up when I'm doing this or not, but along the left-hand side, I'm sorry, there's some information. So if we're going into model search, we can hit view flood data. Underneath here, there's a model search drop down. And then, of course, flood model search. It will take us to the landing page for our flood model search, where you'll see the map of Georgia that I just pulled up with all the green counties and some drop down boxes over here to the right. And I'm scrolling too much. So the thing to note about this is there's several ways to search. You can you can select the watershed if you know the Huck 8 watershed that you're currently looking for a model. Or probably of more interest to you, you can actually go in and select the county. We have all the counties in here. I happen to live in Forsyth County, so we'll go ahead and select Forsyth County. You can actually pull in a city if you want, but it's just as easy to search by, if not easier to search by county. What it will do is it'll pull up these modeled streams, okay? So every stream that we have a model for is going to show up in this list. So then you go find the stream you're interested in. So let's say Sawney Creek, and then you can search for it and hit find. I'm going to scroll down a little bit and you can see here where it's saying search for results for Sawney Creek, and it pulls up reports. Every entry here represents a model. So you could start by asking yourself, why are there two models for Sawney Creek? That's confusing. Well, there are two different levels of study. So we have a Sawney Creek, part of Sawney Creek is studied as Zone AE, and it's its own model. And then the Zone A portion of Sawney Creek is its own model as well. It pulls those up. You figure out, you can click on it And if you do, it'll actually zoom in this map viewer and show you the portion of the stream that's covered by that model. So you have this on here. So what do you want to do? So the next thing you can do is click this download button, and it'll automatically download a zip file that contains not only the model, but any other GIS type information that may be available as well. Not that you need that, really, you're just looking for the model. So if I was to click that, I'm not going to do it now because I don't want to start the download process and slow my computer up. But if you click on that, it'll download the for Stony Creek as a zip file, and then you have your HEC-RAS model that you can use. So let me go back to the presentation. Okay, so, big deal. So this is still part of our better way. So what does this mean? So now you have a model. You can grab HEC-RAS, you can open it up, and some of the things you can view in that model, as you can see here, is a profile plot. You can see the cross sections, you can turn on the road names, and basically this profile becomes just like a Zone AE profile that you can find in the FIS text. You can use it the exact same way. You can get, so if you're used to getting BFEs from the profile for Zone AE BFEs, then this is a really, it's the same thing, same exact thing. Behind that profile is a profile output table, which gives the exact BFE at each cross section in that model. If you're interested properties in between two cross sections, you can just linear interpolate and come up with a BFE. You don't need to use the profile, but these tools are in there, they're in the model. And of course, they are should be very familiar to you. But there are drawbacks. And for the non-engineers out there, the drawbacks can be quite limiting. The first one is you have to know how to navigate HEC-RAS. If you've never used HEC-RAS, you're not even going to know how to necessarily open a file, let alone pull up the profile or the profile table. Inside our models, there may be multiple streams. So that Stony Creek model could also have Stony Creek Tributary 1, Stony Creek Tributary 2 in it. You have to know how to select the right reach in order to make sure you're looking at the correct profile to get that BFE information. You also have to know how to select the correct profile. We don't just study the 1% annual chance flood in our Zone A areas. We do the 0.2, the 10, the 25. We do all the recurrence intervals that we would do in the Zone AE, so they're all in there. And of course, this takes time. Time from the standpoint that if you don't know how to navigate HEC-RAS, you've got to go watch some tutorials and figure it out. But also time from the standpoint that you have to figure out which model you need, go onto our website, figure out if we have the model, download the model, open the model, so on and so forth. So that is the better way, the models. We do have something I like to call the best way. And I'm going to show you a tool now that is absolutely, I think it's absolutely amazing. We use this at all of our meetings. When we're talking to homeowners on the phone, we use this tool. When we're doing research for particular issues in communities, this is really the tool that we use. Now I am going to start another demo, and while I'm pulling this up, Emily, I'm going to ask you, has there been any questions anywhere while I'm pulling this up?
Not yet. I do want to let everyone know for the next poll question, if we're still having technical difficulties, we're going to be asking you to put your answer along with your name and email address in the chat box.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're back on the landing page here. So let's take a look at our flood risk snapshot. So right here on the landing page, we make this very easy, not only for community officials, but for property owners elected officials, anyone. It says identify your flood risk. So what you want to do here, sorry, I had to get my mouse unhung up. What you want to do here is you want to type in the address you're interested in. So I'm going to look at this address here that's in Evans, Georgia. You can type in any address and you will get a snapshot for that particular address. So if you hit find, it'll pull up one or more options for you to choose from. You just pick the one that is the closest. And the reason it does this because you may misspell the road name, you may not know the city, so it gives you several options and you can go that way. After you click on that option, it's going to pull up this. This is our flood risk snapshot. So over here to the left, it has a map. On that map, it has an aerial that shows the floodplain, which happens to be the unnamed tributary to Uchi Creek. And it has footprints for the houses. Not that that's really necessary because you can see it in the aerial. It's just like any other map viewer. So I can actually zoom in and zoom out and pan left and pan right. If for some reason it drops a dot and say this isn't 352 Sounding, you can actually move the dot. If you can see here, the property kind of clips the Zone A area. So if I click on that little bit of area, it'll actually change up the information. So now I will zoom in, sorry. Getting carried away with my zooming. So over here, it will tell you your risk. So we have the property flood risk. This happens to be a high risk Zone A. And I'm not sure if people can see that very well. Let me actually zoom in when I'm talking about these a little bit. That may be helpful for everyone. Hopefully you can see this better now, this house area, high risk Zone A. For this particular area, for any particular area, I should say, you're going to get a lot, potentially a lot of information. Whatever information is available, we are actually going to put in here. In this instance, all you're getting is a base flood elevation return, which is 217.9 feet. There's your BFE. So if you were just looking, excuse me, if you were just looking for the BFE for this property for an elevation certificate, you're done. You got 217.9. This snapshot, you can print it out. You can attach it to the elevation certificate, give it to the homeowner, whatever you need to do. But also in here, in a lot of our areas, we have some other things that you can look at, like the probability of flooding over a 30-year period. So, a homeowner can say, well, okay, I'm in the floodplain, but what does that mean? Well, we can say, well, you have 60% chance of flooding over the next 30 years, which happens to be the life of a typical mortgage, which is why we pick that. Some areas we have LIDAR, and if so, we'll be populating the lowest adjacent grade, which is very helpful. And I'll talk about that in a bit more later. Over to the right, you see underneath there where it says flood depths. This is another thing. So you can see there that the 1% annual chance, not only do you know the elevation, 217.9 feet, that equates to 1.5 feet of water in that house. That's not necessary for determining a BFE, but if you happen to be communicating risk, then the homeowner, can start to put the pieces together. What does a 1.5 feet of water look like in my house? Just destroyed my carpet, my drywall, some furniture, and then dollar signs keep adding up, and it really helps them make a more educated decision on how much flood insurance coverage they need. Scrolling down, we put some local information on here. So if you were to pull up this BFE, but you wanted to get some more data for whatever reason, like say the effective map panel, we put that information on there. We give the watershed name, the county, all the stuff that you can pull off the maps, and so that you can go pull the FIS text or anything else that you might want to do for your particular issue. We also put a legend down here so that everything is clear as far as You know, when you're looking at something, it might get a little confusing if you don't have the legend come on. For the most part, though, it's fairly simple. And sorry, let me zoom back to actual size. Okay. So this is the best method. You type in your address, you make sure that your dot's located, you know, where the house is, and then you get your BFE at that particular place. And I accidentally must have clicked off of it a few seconds ago, but now that I click back on it, you can see the BFE is 218.4, and the depth is a little different. So it's important to kind of make sure you click. And again, you can scroll anywhere you want and click anywhere you want. So if I click here, you're getting a base flood elevation about 204. But if I click closer to the bottom of the screen, I might get or towards the middle of the stream, I might get a different answer, so on and so forth. So that is flood risk snapshot. I am going to go back to my presentation.
While you're doing that, Joe, just wanted to let everybody know that Jeff has posted for us poll question number 1. If you can go into chat and answer it, I'll read it out for you real quick. How do you determine BFEs in Zone A areas? A, create a model. B, simplify method. D, ask the developer or homeowner. Or D, I don't know.
Well, I'm going to wait for you to tell me it's okay to move on, and please, you know, take your time there.
I'm going to just remind everybody real quick, be sure to put your name and email address beside your answer. And Joe, if you want to keep going, that's fine.
Okay.
I know we'll be coming up on the next one pretty soon.
Okay, no problem. We talked about the difficult way. We talked about the better way. We talked about the best way, which is the snapshot, in my opinion. So where are we going moving forward? Well, moving forward, we're doing something called base level engineering. So let's talk about base level engineering a little bit. You may not have heard this before, but I guarantee you this is going to be the most useful product that we create as far as determining Zone A BFEs in most areas across the state. Originally, FEMA came up with the base level engineering concept as a way to determine the validity of the current effective Zone A models and also Zone AE to a certain extent. The idea is to create models, Zone A models in areas, and see how much the floodplains change using better data, more up-to-date data. And if it's changed drastically, then we know we need to go in and do some sort of mapping update. Internally, that's what we use these models for. We use them to determine the extent of changes that can be expected in a watershed for a given community by incorporating the most up-to-date data. This map that I've got up on the screen now shows our plan for FY19, which we've gotten started, FY20, which we have gotten started, and FY21, which we will get started probably late this year. You can see that it covers a large portion of the state. In fact, that's probably about half the state there. we picked the communities, for those of you that understand the fall line in Georgia. The fall line is the line that separates kind of the coastal, flatter areas in Georgia from the rolling hills and mountains of North Georgia. We started in the south for a couple of reasons. The first one is they do not have very up-to-date models south of the fall line. Some areas do, but most areas have really old models. That's because we have been given our limited funding, we had to start somewhere. We really started around Atlanta, and we've been branching out from Atlanta ever since then for the past, say, 10 years now. And so we have some really good models for north of the fall line. South of the fall line, we don't. So that's where we're starting our base level engineering. So what's base level engineering in a little more detail? The first thing is we're creating models for all Zone A areas. And we're creating that up to the 1 square mile. Let me say that differently. We're at least going up to the 1 square mile drainage area. In some instances, because we are doing both 1D and 2D analysis, especially for the 2D, we are capturing flooding information for drainage areas smaller than a square mile. And we'll have modeling for that. We are leveraging the most up-to-date LiDAR. Here in Georgia, we've been spending a lot of money flying LiDAR in what has to be the largest LiDAR collection effort in the history of Georgia. In fact, it probably dwarfs most other states. We have actually funded LiDAR for the entire state. We still have flights that have been flown that are in the QA/QC process. We have other flights that are waiting to be flown, but we have secured funding and scheduled enough to get LiDAR for the entire state of Georgia. And just as a side note, when that LiDAR becomes available to us, it will also become available to you. And because it's highly accurate, and because it's funded by FEMA, because it's managed by the state, it'll be yours for free. And you know, we could probably do a whole nother lunch and learn on LiDAR, but for now, let's just look at base level engineering a little closer. This is the big thing for us for our discussion here today. The base level engineering is not going to, we're going to create models. And we are not updating the firm panels, the effective firm panels for those models. But you can use those for best available data. What does that mean? That means that poll question you just looked at, it's like, how do you determine your BFEs? You know, like torn interpolation, normal depth calculation, creating models. The reason you're able to do that is because by their definition, zone areas don't have BFEs, so you're able to use different techniques. Because we are creating these models and there's not an effective model there, these become best available data, which means you can use them for BFEs. The second thing is you can build off these models. You can take these models, a developer can take them, you can take them, you can add to them, you can change them, you can add more detail to them, turn it into Zone AE, all those good type things. We are doing right now, including next year, which we're getting the grant for, 25,000 miles of new analysis, which may or may not sound like a lot to you. That is a lot of miles, let me tell you. If we were to do this the traditional way, where we go watershed by watershed, and we just focus in on that one watershed, and we create new D-firm panels, and those go effective and that, it would take us a couple of decades to get through what we're about to get through in 3 years. And the good thing is we will make that available for you as they become, as they're completed and they're QC'd. Which brings me to the last tool. Now this tool here, this is our BLE viewer. So now we got all this great base flood elevation data, right? We have, this tool is not available yet. Sorry, I'm trying to share my screen while I'm talking. Apparently I can't do two things at once. So let me go back over here. This is in development, and I'm hoping that the website will actually work for me. Hopefully everybody can see that. This is our BLE viewer. This is just a one little piece of one little watershed. It's in development. We are, I wouldn't say we're working out the kinks so much, but that's what we're doing. It's just in development. Hopefully it'll be available soon. As we finish BLE for a particular area, we'll be throwing it in here. So what is the thing about this BLE viewer that's gotten me very excited and should get you excited from many different standpoints? The first one is you can see the floodplains. Because this, again, this information isn't going to be effective information. In other words, we're not creating new maps. But since it's the best available data, we should be able to give you this information. So this is just a web viewer. You can zoom in, zoom out, and I don't know why it's not refreshing very well. I know how to fix that. Just hit the refresh button. Developers are, yeah, looks like the developers are actually in the site working on it as I'm talking, which means don't have the information. But you know what? That's not a problem because I've got slides in my PowerPoint and I will pull those up and share my PowerPoint with you. See, I prepared for these kind of things. I knew my live demo would die. I didn't want the development team to stop working on this. I think it's more important to get it done than it is for me to show you a live demo, especially since it's being worked on here. So here's the BLE viewer. So the first thing about the BLE viewer is you find the area you're interested in, go ahead and click on that area, and it pulls up this BLE summary. It has a couple of maps, shows you the BLE results, and then over in the right-hand map, it shows you changes between BLE and effective. There's a legend for this that tells you, whether the changes have been, whether the floodplain is going to be getting larger or more narrow, and things like that. Down at the bottom of this BLE summary screen is an actual table, and it provides you with the BFE information. It also provides you with that estimated flood depth. So this is very similar to the snapshot, but with a few additional goodies, so to speak, that'll make your lives a lot easier, I believe. So you can see it has the address up at the top. The flood depth, you can look there and see, well, there's my 1% 100-year elevation, 208.2. Down at the bottom, it gives you the annual chance probability of flooding for the area that you click, and the chance over 30 years. At the top of the screen, there's actually tabs. Now, again, this is the BLE summary tab, but we also have what's known as the LOMA view tab. And that's the other one I want to talk to you about. So when you click on the LOMA view tab, it pulls up this information here, gives you a map of the area, gives you some information here in the middle. I think I got that enhanced for you a little bit. So in here is all the information a homeowner would need in order to perform or to submit a LiDAR-derived LOMA, which is a new thing with FEMA, because if you have quality LiDAR, which we will for the entire state and already do for most of the state, you can use that LiDAR to come up with your lowest adjacent grade, which means they won't have to go out and pay a surveyor to grab that lag to put on the form. It also gives you the BFE, which is best available data. It says estimated here, but that is what you would use. Over to the right, it gives you information about the LiDAR and the source, things you'll need when submitting that LOMA. At the bottom of that page, we've actually put instructions too. So there's instructions on how to specifically submit for LOMA and the different things you'll need. So you'll be able to print this page, include that with these other things like plat mat and your deed, and you will be able to submit a LOMA. And for a lot of areas, you'll be able to pull together a LOMA packet in a matter of minutes instead of a matter of weeks or days or weeks. And I feel like that's going to be very helpful for a lot of people, especially since a lot of times you're going to be pulling up these sorts of things for BLEs for LOMAs. Okay, Emily, poll question 2. I'm still not getting that thing, so you're going to have to do your thing again, if you don't mind.
Jeff, can you read it for me, please?
Sure, and I also posted it in the chat window as well. Poll question number 2 is, what can't you use BLE data for? A, letters of map amendment. B, for use in developing models for LOMARs. C, determining BFEs in Zone AE areas. Or D, determining BFEs for development permitting in Zone A areas. And again, the poll question has been posted in the chat as well.
I'm just going to give a second or two. I'm pretty much done with my presentation, so we're okay on time, Emily, on my end. I just got a few quick slides at the end here. A lot of answers coming in, so very good. And a lot of different answers, and that's fine. And because BLE is very new, I'd be surprised if everybody got it correctly. And that was the point I wanted to make with this poll question. As we do this BLE analysis, we are going to be doing it for your communities, but we are going to actually have meetings with you. We're not just going to dump this on you. We actually are setting up training. We have what's known as the BLE playbook, which is going to tell you all about BLE. It's going to tell you how to use BLE. It's going to tell you about the BLE viewer. So by the time we will take this information for you, we will be setting up a meeting to talk to you about this. And that was really the point I wanted to get across, because it is different than what FEMA has traditionally done and what the state has traditionally done. And we need to spend a little more time on it. Moving on, because I think most people have probably answered it now. The answer is actually C. I believe C. I forget the order I had them in, but basically you cannot use BLE to determine base flood elevations in Zone AE areas. Zone AE areas, by definition, have effective information, which means you have to use that information. Zone A areas means you can use whatever the best available data is that you have available to you. And this BLE data will almost certainly be, for most areas, be the best available data. Very good. Just a few slides. Oh, sorry, I clicked too many times. So how would I approach if I had to do a BLE? Because I showed you several tools, and this is all kind of a work in progress. The intent is to eventually have everything up on the snapshot or the BLE viewer for the non-effective stuff, and have all models in the model search. If someone said, actually it happens to me all the time, my boss Hayden Blaze comes to me and says, I need a BFE for this area. The first thing I do is I run the snapshot. I run it to see the area. I run it to figure out the flooding source. I also hope that it has BFE information in there already. Therefore, my job is done. If that didn't work, I would go to the BLE viewer when it's available. So that would be my second step, because this is going to be the next easiest way to get BLE information. The third thing I would do would be search for a model. Again, there's no need to create a model if we've already created one and it's been certified and QC'd by an independent group. The fourth thing I would do would be to create the model itself if I had that capability, or I would ask the homeowner, or I guess homeowner wouldn't be right, but I'd ask the developer to create the model. This is my contact information. It's got my phone number, my email information. We're running low on time here, but if you have questions now or in the future, if you have something you need to get a BFE and you're not really sure where to go, you can contact me and we can walk through it together. That's what I'm here for. That's one of my main jobs. So feel free to do that. So I'm going to ask Emily if there's any other questions or any questions. I guess we haven't had any yet, but also, Emily, I'm going to turn it over to you, barring any questions. And
right. Well, we have one question that that I'm sure everybody would love to know the answer for their particular communities. But is there any estimate of when the base level engineering tool will be available for our communities? And that one was, I believe, from Beth, and I'm sorry, I can't read Beth's last name, Palmer?
That is a very good question, and I don't know the answer to that. But what I can do is I can try to come up with a better estimate. I'll work with our contractor and our developer to see if I can come up with something better. The fact of the matter is I just got through reviewing the initial tool just yesterday and providing feedback to the developer. Of course, other folks at the DNR, Emily, Brian, the rest of them at DNR, they're doing the same. So we're getting that information over to people. We're looking at it and getting the comments over. At that point, they'll be able to clean it up and get it ready. I'm not really sure how long that's going to take. I can't, well, I guess the short answer, unfortunately, is I just don't know. I just wanted you to know that it was out there so that you'd be looking for it. And you can go to georgiadfirm.com and get updates on it as well as call me and get updates on it anytime you want. Unfortunately, I can't answer the question. That's the best I can do.
We've got one other quick question for you, Joe. In the Zone A, finding the base flood elevation is based on natural conditions, or can it be based on fill?
In a zone area,
finding the BFE is based on natural conditions, or can it be based on fill?
All of our information is based on whatever the existing conditions are at the time. So if a homeowner is going to place fill, if it's a single property and replacing fill, that's not really going to have any real impact on the BFE. If they're placing fill in and doing a large development, then they would have to go and do their own analysis, because our analysis wouldn't be valid any longer. I'm not exactly sure that was the answer they were looking for, but if you were doing a LOMA based on fill, you could use our tools, come up with a BFE and use it for that, because it's not really going to impact, have any impact, or most likely not. But I think that's what they were asking, but I'm not, hopefully they can get in the chat and expand on the question, or let me know if that answered it. Or if it didn't, give me a call and we can get on the same page.
All right, sounds good. Thank you so much for everybody for attending today. It was a wonderful presentation, and I hope that we all now understand some more about leveraging DNR tools to determine Zone A base flood elevations. For those of you who are looking for continuing education credits, please be sure to put your name and email address in the chat, and I hope you answered both of the questions that were in the chat as well. Be sure to mark May 5th down from 12 to 1 for our next Lunch and Learn. We will be sending out an invitation for that, so be sure to look for it and sign up. Again, for everyone who joined us today, we will be distributing the slide deck and a survey that we'd greatly appreciate you completing. And if you don't have any other questions or any other concerns, I appreciate it. That wraps up our Lunch and Learn for today. Have a great day, everyone.